What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Top of the List. This is RB, and I'm here with Dom. And of course, a highly anticipated episode tonight. We'll be discussing the premiere episodes, 2 episodes of WandaVision on Disney+. Of course, this was one that you and I, Dom, were extremely excited about. Our first installment of anything from the MCU since Spider-Man Far From Home.
Yeah, absolutely. Was really excited to see what could happen on this one. Before we get started on our thoughts on these first 2 episodes, want to give a shout out to our fans here watching on YouTube. What do you guys think of this kind of final form of our setup here at Top of the List Studios? We got our screen behind us showing whatever we're reviewing. Props, of course, depending on what we're watching. We got our Groot and Drax the Destroyer mug and our signature Stay Spicy box.
Staying spicy.
And yeah, so we'll try to keep it like this too. We wanted to add this table in front of us, made us feel more like we're on a talk show, I guess.
Yep.
So, but without further ado, I think we should start off with episode 1 of WandaVision, and of course, we're gonna go ahead and give out our scores, and then we're gonna go right into spoilers. Yeah. So, my score for episode 1 is gonna be a 7.5 out of 10. Okay. What about you?
Yeah, I'm probably going to give it an 8 out of 10. So 8, I was thinking at first I was going to give it an 8.5 out of 10, but then upon, spoilers here a little bit for our episode, upon watching episode 2, I was just so amazed by episode 2. And I know we've got some amazing things coming up for us later on in this series that I didn't want to give my score too high early on, so I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10.
Right on. Yeah, I think the reason I give this one a 7.5 out of 10 is this is the tip of the iceberg. Right. This is where it all starts, and the reason why this one isn't in, we categorize 8 as great. If you guys don't know, we categorize each letter, each number we go up with a different adjective. 9 is amazing, 10 masterpiece, 8 great, 7 and 7.5 is good. 7.5 is really good. This was a really good episode of television, but it's hindered a little bit by this is the first time we're delving into this, alternate reality, show within a show, high concept thing that we haven't ever seen this before in Marvel, and you can feel it. This is them pulling the strings a lot, trying to give us this new medium. This is the first time we're seeing something Marvel Studios on a streaming show in the television format. Very true.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't go as far as saying that. We've had Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter and whatnot, but I see what you're saying, absolutely, and this is the furthest out we've ever been, out there. Like, my mind was just blown, from these first 2 episodes and knowing, a little bit more after, reading up on the show, what it's going to be about. So yeah, I think this is definitely the most ambitious Marvel has been. And, it's great that, they're doing it to kick off, with a streaming miniseries rather than just going straight for it on film. I'm really excited to see where it goes. But yeah, I see what you're saying. This is definitely the tip of the iceberg. And we didn't get much into the fact that they were in an alternate universe in this episode. This was truly, paying homage to, the I Love Lucy, Leave It to Beaver, 50s, black and white, original sitcom.
Absolutely. And, this one had a lot to do with, this is your setup episode. Yeah. In television, they call it the pilot. Right. This is our pilot. And, you mentioned earlier, this is the most ambitious they've been. I think this is a great metaphor because, the last thing we've seen was technically Spider-Man Far From Home. Right. But realistically, the last time we've seen characters like this, some of the main Avengers characters like Wanda and Vision, Avengers Endgame. And, that was them being the most bombastically gigantic they could be. Right. And I think it is just pure brilliance that they can start off phase 4 with something as small scale as a television show. And, nevertheless, this is just a sitcom most of the time.
Right. Now, let me ask you, before we dive further in, can we review both, honestly, for our audience, but also for myself, and I know you're more the MCU head than me, where we left off in Endgame? I remember a lot about Vision. I don't remember what happened to Wanda towards the end of Endgame.
So at the end of Infinity War,
I remember,
Vision is murdered.
Correct. The Mind Stone is taken out by Thanos.
Yeah, and so Vision is dead, and Wanda Maximoff is snapped away, of course.
Right.
And then in Endgame, when Bruce Banner returns everybody with the Infinity Gauntlet that Tony Stark makes, Wanda shows back up, and she has that line where she says, "You took everything from me," and then Thanos says, "I don't even know who you are." And that was the last time we saw
Got it. So we do know.
And of course, she was at the funeral for Tony Stark.
Right. Okay. So we do know where Wanda is post Endgame, and obviously we know where Vision is too. So do we know what the exact time period, at least where, you know, whoever's watching this is actually taking place? Do we know that yet, or has that been released?
My guess is it's post Endgame.
Okay, understood.
You know, we get that little bit of back and forth on the lake after Tony Stark's funeral, where she's talking to Clint, and they're talking about how, you know, of course, Black Widow dies in Endgame, and she's talking about how, you know, they lost Vision, and that's kind of the last exchange we see. Okay. It hasn't been confirmed when this takes place. It's got to be post Endgame. It's got to be like, you know, in Endgame we were in 2023. It's got to be like 2023 or farther ahead.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, so before we go any further into this one, so I think we should go ahead and just say, yeah, so 7.5 for me, 8 for you. Yep. And let's give our score. I guess we should just give both episode scores. Okay. That way we don't go into spoilers too soon. Episode 2. Was this an improvement for you?
Absolutely. Not to knock anything about the you know, the premiere episode, but episode 2 for me, we got, you know, we're getting a little bit more uncovered. We have a couple of sequences where we can see the outside world, you know, coming in and being involved in whatever this world that Wanda and Vision are living in right now, which I really like. So I'm going to give this one just a slight step up. Because I still think it was, you know, also doing a great job paying homage to sitcoms and had a lot of great comedy. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10.
8.5 out of 10? Okay, yeah, I'm going to do the same thing as you. Just a half score better. 8 out of 10 for me. Right. This second episode definitely was firmly great. I thought it was great television and funnier than the first episode, I think so. Just on the magic deck alone, I thought that was such a phenomenal sequence there. But other than that, I don't want to go too far into plot details, but yeah, so 8 out of 10 for me on the second episode, 8.5 out of 10 for Ryan, high score for him. Hope we can keep it up. But let's talk spoilers now. We're going to talk about all the references to past MCU, all Easter eggs, I guess you could call them. And of course, big spoilers as far as the story goes, and I'm going to delve into some of my comic book knowledge. Maybe you have some insight too as to what your predictions can be on what's going to happen. So spoiler alert, everybody. Spoiler alert. We don't have that many sound effects on this show, so I make my own.
Yes.
Perfect. But the first thing I want to start off with is I don't want to discourage people from watching. That's why I waited for the spoiler section to say this. When I heard that we were going to get Marvel Studios making full-length television series on Disney+, in my mind, I was thinking we might be getting an 8-hour, 8 episodes or 9 episodes, 8 to 9 hour movie. That is not what is happening here. We're getting 30-minute episodes of television through and through. Fully a sitcom, more sitcom than I expected. What did you think? Was it more of a sitcom than you thought?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, especially with the most recent trailers that we've seen drop, where we see, yes, we've seen cuts of each, sitcom that we'll see Wanda and Vision in, but we've seen cuts into the real world. We see, FBI agents, storming compounds and whatnot. So I thought there was going to be a lot more in that. Like you said, an 8-hour movie, which was one of my major fears when I heard that this MCU phase was going to be primarily television series on Disney+. That being said, I agree with you. I love what they went for. These are going to be, from what it seems, 8 distinctly different episodes that all tie together at the end, and I couldn't be more excited for it.
Yeah, that was a big, and for me, what the main signifier was that they were going to go full television in this and just go full wacky was the beginning of our episode. We get our Marvel Studios logo in the, widescreen theater format in our red and white lettering, but then it converts to our 4:3 old school, black and white style of television.
Now, here's where the only thing I'm going to rebut here.
Okay.
And I understand that, and I don't even know that COVID played a deciding factor in these, all coming out on, as series rather than films. I think this would have been amazing. Granted, it wouldn't have been the same thing that it is, but I think this would have been amazing if it was a film that showed the evolution. And we saw that on the screen, the widescreen format, like you said, and then this coming into the screen in the black and white. I think that would have been amazing.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from too, but I mean, that we get to watch it in our own
of course.
And just for the record, I don't think this was ever going to be a movie.
Oh no, I agree with you. I agree with you definitely, but all in all, we've just become so accustomed and so in love with going to the theaters every, 6 months to go see whatever the newest MCU film is. And it's going to be different, COVID or not, this was the plan for Disney and, this incredible streaming service, Disney Plus, was to release these series. And it's just going to be a new experience for us. And, I'm all for it, but it's definitely something new and something different than we've come accustomed to in 15 years now that the MCU has been around since, Iron Man 1?
12, 13 years.
Okay, yeah.
But, I mean, how awesome is it going to be when we finally get to return and see the Marvel Studios logo on big screen?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's Black Widow. Maybe it's not till, later at the end of the year. We'll see what happens, but very excited to see what Marvel Studios has for us. Let's talk about the spoilers in this episode. Like we said, we're going to talk references. So can you think of any big ones that you want to talk about here?
I think something brilliant that they're utilizing, and we talked about this immediately after watching, I love the commercial breaks in, and I'm almost 100% sure that these are going to tie together, these commercial breaks, because of the ending scene where we see someone is watching this. So that there's a bigger hand at play. But of course, in the premiere episode, we have the Stark Industries toaster, and then in episode 2, we have the Strucker watch. Mm-hmm. Of course, references to, Tony Stark, Stark Industries, and then what was it, Hans Strucker? And
Baron von
Strucker from Age of Ultron. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm sure these are going to tie in at a later point, which I'm really excited to put them all together. But even if they don't, and they're just little fun Easter eggs, it almost brings me back to like the older days of Saturday Night Live where they did the mock commercials. And I love it. I'm all for it.
Yeah, totally. I see what you're saying there. And, a lot of great stuff there. And I think, in the Tony Stark Industries toaster commercial, we get our first hint at one of my favorite visual cues, which is the color red bleeding through the black and white. Mm-hmm. Something that's been done in Schindler's List before to different effect. But I love that, her powers are red, and sometimes we get, the little red light on the toaster, or the
powers are Scarlet.
Scarlet
Witch. She's not the Red Witch, sir.
You're right. Scarlet Witch. And I like that visual imagery. And I guess we could just kind of go into some of like the little references we get here at the beginning, especially this first scene here, this opening sequence that we're watching right now with the theme song with Vision going through the door. And then, of course, he forgets her behind.
Right, yeah.
And then they go right through the chair together. And this is kind of my first hint that we are in something that Wanda is altering the reality of. Because we have seen, it's a small, tiny thing, but in Civil War, when Vision, Wanda, and, Clint Barton, Hawkeye, he comes to get Wanda out of that complex and, bring her to Captain America's side, Wanda actually manipulates Vision's powers because Vision has Hawkeye in an armhold, and then she uses her powers to force him to become, transparent, and then Hawkeye is out of the chokehold. So this is me showing, like, obviously he can go through things, but she used his powers to make sure that they could go through this. Because I'm reading way too much into it.
I don't know. I thought it was more he's going to hold her over the chair, so it's just his legs that went through it. Yeah. That's more what I got from it.
I don't know.
I mean, like I said, you're the one who's sort of the comic book expert. I'm just along for the ride.
I just love it.
Yeah.
And I think, early on when we get a few, it's kind of almost like they're breaking the fourth wall a little bit, not just breaking the fourth wall, but like awkward glances or things that seem a little bit off.
Right.
I could tell we're in a Truman Show situation.
Well, yeah, I think that's straight out of, the 50s sitcom, the I Love Lucy, that we even get it with the incredible opening joke with the plate. There's my wife with her flying saucers. There's my husband with his indestructible head.
Which we know isn't indestructible because Thanos ripped stuff out of it, which is what they're referencing. Yep. And the flying saucers, maybe they're referencing the Thanos' ships.
Oh, see, my thought with that was almost like when Sokovia gets, ripped up.
You're right. Yeah, that could be a reference. That's a good idea. So we have all kinds of stuff like that. And then we have this character that's their neighbor, right? Yeah. And we know she's going to be recurring over and over. Agnes. And what do you think is her potential here?
I don't think she's anything more than comic relief. I mean, once again, very much Edie in I Love Lucy. I did watch quite a bit of I Love Lucy growing up. It was on, after school TV sometimes, on Fox or before The Simpsons came on. So I always caught the end of I Love Lucy before The Simpsons started. But yeah, I think she's more there for comic relief and to push the story ahead. But I think it's going to be interesting to see her character evolve as their series evolve. We don't have much of a change from episode 1 to episode 2 when we go sort of the 50s sitcom, the I Love Lucy, to the 60s, more the Bewitched. But I think we're going to have a big jump here as we saw at the end of episode 2. We see the color come in. We're expecting the 70s, maybe a Brady Bunch-esque, to see what kind of role she plays. But I do think she's more there to just drive the story along. I don't know if she has a bigger part in this scheme that's going on.
And how about, we were already talking about it, Monica Rambeau showing up as, I think what Gertrude was it?
Geraldine?
Geraldine, my bad, yeah. Geraldine showing up, and she obviously doesn't know who she really is.
Well, there's a big line there that, I think we some of us caught on to because we've seen the trailers where we say, in the trailers we see her saying, I don't know who I am. Yeah. But we get a hint of that early on in episode 2, where they're kind of sitting there at, the meeting, the planning committee meeting, and she goes, I don't even know why I'm here. And, we just think Wanda hears that as though she's kind of brushing off, why am I sitting here? But truly, she's saying, I don't know why I'm here.
Yeah, I get what you're saying there. I think this is more recurring characters, and we saw characters that were working in Vision's office show up in episode 1, show up in episode 2.
Yep.
So it's like we have a recurring cast here, and it's great. Now let's talk about 2 biggest spoilers, starting off with episode 1's biggest spoiler. Of course, you already talked about it. We kind of get that final shot of them looking at the camera, starting the TV and smiling, and then of course we zoom out, and the aspect ratio changes back to our Marvel Studios theater aspect ratio, and we see that someone is watching WandaVision.
Yeah.
And we see a bunch of logos. And do you know what this is?
I did not pick up on the logos. No, so that's why it's great having you to review this with afterwards.
So I'm just going to go. If you guys haven't read the comics and know what this is, I know 100% what this is. We see a bunch of logos with swords. And of course, this is hinting at somehow the involvement of another agency similar to that. You can compare it to S.H.I.E.L.D. SWORD, which stands for, Sentient World Observation and
RD.
And Reconnaissance Division or something like that. But in the show, I guess I read online before we recorded this, they're changing it. It's Sentient Weapon Observation Diagnostics Division and Reconnaissance Division or something like that. But basically, they're observing sentient weapons, which to me that means they're observing Wanda as a sentient weapon herself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that, and yeah, I didn't know that at all. But no, that's awesome, and that's great to hear, and I think I think there's something to speak of in both of these episodes that would definitely make sense to that. Is we see now in both episodes, one of the major conflicts is Wanda losing control.
Right.
We see that in the first episode when she's making dinner, and then we see it again in the second episode when she's talking to the head of the planning committee, and that's when the outside world sort of comes into effect, especially in the second one where we hear the radio calling out to her, Wanda, what are they doing to you in there? Wanda, are you there?
Yeah, which is our second big spoiler that I wanted to hand out here, guys. I mean, you don't want to know who the voice is. I'm going to say it right now. It's Randall Park. Right. The actor Randall Park, who played an FBI agent in Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it seems that he has joined SWORD in this future 2023 time, and now he is talking to Wanda through here, and maybe he's going to show up.
Here's the question: did he join SWORD now, or is that why an FBI agent was in charge of observing Scott Lang while he was under house arrest?
Or maybe he was always part of SWORD.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe Scott Lang was another one of these, sentient weapons, as you said, that can be utilized, as Ant-Man with the suit. You know, maybe he knew he played this sort of bumbling FBI agent. Man, I can never catch you. You know, I wish I could. Maybe he is observing the whole time. He knows exactly what's going on.
It could be, and you know, we're getting into this ideas about, you know, the control of these superhuman individuals again, which is circling us back around to Civil War, which is one of my favorite storylines that they've ever pulled off in the MCU, which is just a bright spot for me. So I'm like, okay, if they're going to be circling back around to this and doing this, you know, how do we deal with these people that are essentially weapons? I love that idea, and that's what Marvel Comics has always dealt with, and that's what's great about it. So we talked about, you know, Sword. We talked about Monica Rambeau. We talked about who is, of course, we didn't say Monica Rambeau is the little girl we see in Captain Marvel.
Yeah, the Carol Danvers, you know, quote unquote best friend, and you know, the one who picks out the suit. But you know, we had a theory about this that we were discussing. You know, how could she be of this age? I mean, we were discussing. We saw in Spider-Man: Far From Home that people who were not blipped away did age normally. Right. So we're assuming that maybe she's in there and she has aged, you know, with the time. So maybe we're a little bit past 2023 now. She's a little bit older of a woman. Why she's in there, though, we still have a lot of question marks around, because she did not have any powers as far as we knew.
And also remember that Captain Marvel takes place in the 90s.
That's okay. So there we go. I didn't even think about that. Would make sense. All right.
Maybe she either didn't get, you know, blipped away,
or did,
or she did.
I had totally forgotten that. Yes, that's right. You know, from our one scene where she crashed into the Blockbuster video at the beginning, and that was it for the 90s.
Right. That's why I hated it. Or not hated it, but that was my main dislike.
Yeah. It's only Blockbuster. There's a nice plug. Go watch our MCU phase 1 through 3 reviews that are all on our channel, folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, as far as Sword goes, and we see this little, I guess what it would be, a drone that she finds in the plan.
I wouldn't even go as far as saying that. It's a toy helicopter.
Yeah, I guess that's what a drone is, isn't it?
Right. But I understand. But I don't know necessarily. I think that was more referencing, you know, that they were fast forwarding to another genre because we had it in color. You know, I wouldn't. I mean, I could see what you're saying. Maybe it's a drone that's spying on her, similar
because it had the Sword logo on.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
But you know, similar to the Truman Show, of course. For those of you who have seen the Truman Show, what sparks all the events is a piece of equipment falling from this giant set that they're in that he thinks is his world.
Right.
So I can understand that. I just saw it at first, you know, and I didn't, you know, of course I didn't catch on to the Sword logo because I didn't read the comics. You know, I'm just along for the ride of the movies. I thought it was just maybe showing that they're, you know, she's starting to speed up time again, and this was a child's toy, you know, further perpetuating the idea that, okay, now she's pregnant, you know, maybe they're going to have a child, and this is just fast forwarding, you know, the timeline is unstable in this reality that she's in.
Yeah, and then of course we have another visitor from someone with Sword, the Beekeeper, who has the Sword logo on his back again.
Yeah, that one was way over my head.
Yeah, I didn't know what that meant.
We saw the Beekeeper come out, and then we heard nope, and we got to fast forward. Yeah.
Yep.
Another awesome reference though to television shows of old, when, you know, people would get them on VHS, and we got even, you know, sort of that old VHS seeing everyone move in reverse.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think we should talk about, as our final point, I don't know if this is a 100% or not, but the last time we might have seen something referring to Sword, Spider-Man Far From Home. It's the after credits scene where we find out that all along Nick Fury was Talos, right?
Correct.
Yes. And of course he says, oh, should we call him? And then his wife says, yeah, you should call him.
Right.
Gets on the phone and says, oh, you know, we gave him the glasses, you know, things went bad, but he handled it. And then cut to Samuel L. Jackson reclining on a beach, watching the message, hanging it up, setting it down, taking a sip of his drink. And then you realize he's in front of like a screen, right? And he's on a giant space station.
And he says, something along the lines of, let's get back to work.
Everybody get back to work. Yeah. And he says, anybody know where my shoes are?
Right. Yeah,
that's pretty great.
So are we saying that this is possibly Sword? And he's a Sword. See, and that's immediately what I thought in episode 1. We got that pan out scene because it was very similar, the looks of what we saw in that spaceship. Yeah. Now, what led me away from that a little bit was the radio communication where, you know, they're trying to reach out to Wanda. What are they doing to you in there? Which to me was more something stating that her being in this alternate reality is something more sinister, that maybe she's trapped in there, which is why, I at first leaned away from, maybe this isn't her, something that she created. Because at first I thought this was just a reality that maybe she created so she could continue to live her life with Vision.
That's kind of the camp I'm in right now, is that she created an alternate reality,
yes,
and all of these sword agents are trying to, get her out of there, and they keep getting trapped in this alternate reality. The only way they can communicate with her is by watching it on TV or through the radio, right? So that's kind of my theory right now as it is. And just kind of back up this space station connection to sword. Yeah. In the comics, I read this online. Of course, I haven't read everything in the comics, but I did read this online. But in the comics, sword is their like head base is a giant space station orbiting. I think it's called the Perch or something like that.
Okay.
Or the Peak or something like that.
Right.
But
now, the only thing that I'm not sure about there is when we saw Nick Fury on that space station, my thought immediately was that's the space station that, was sort of Captain Marvel's space station that she had the scrolls overlooking. Because remember, I thought that he had switched places with Talos and his wife. That was my thought when we were watching Spider-Man Far From Home.
Yeah, I can see that too. You know what? You're right. That could be what that was. Yeah. Absolutely. And the only thing is that I don't know. I think that maybe he, Shield was more of like an Earthbound organization. Right. Sword is supposed to be an intergalactic organization.
Let's talk about this once again. I don't know from what you know from the comics. Okay. We get a little reference to Captain Marvel exploring heroes on other worlds. She mentions it in the beginning of Endgame where they're having that meeting, and she said, I'll be off-world. Where was she that whole time? Maybe, she's working for Sword, and that's why her space station is now, Sword headquarters. Maybe that is what evolved into the Perch.
That's a great theory. That's a great theory. So I think let's just close this one out with, what do we think is going to happen next? Of course, we're going into the 70s, which, what shows do you think they're going to do?
Yeah, like I said, I think Brady Bunch would be the go-to in my mind. But, I think as we get along further, I Love Lucy, Leave It to Beaver, Bewitched, sort of staples, which, they played out really hard here. Once we get into the 70s, 80s, for me, that was an era of TV that we didn't live through and wasn't as widely publicized, when we were younger. So interested to see where they go with this one as well. It seems like from a lot of the trailers, this may be where we spend a lot of time, or there's a second half of the season that they just didn't even show us in the trailers. Yeah. So, because once we get into the 90s, of course, Dom wearing it today, Friends, we're excited. Hopefully we see something a little bit like that.
I'm sitting on a giant couch.
Yes, please, we get all of them, clapping, and I'd be happy. Yeah. Yes. But yeah, really excited to see where they go with this. I think I'm really excited to see how this puzzle unfolds and finding out who's pulling the strings here, if it truly is Wanda, if there's someone else at hand, whoever's watching her is actually sort of trapped her here.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And also what's going on with Vision, because that's right. The last time we did see Vision, he's dead. And of course we have that awesome scene in the trailer where she asks, am I dead? And he goes, no, why would you ask that? She goes, because you are. Because we saw that in the trailers. Yeah. And I think that was sort of at least from the, looking at it more the 80s. So maybe we'll have to wait till episode 4 or 5 to see that.
Yeah, for sure. And, I hope they keep pulling through with the comedy. A lot of great comedy.
Oh, without a doubt.
A lot of great references and some great, mysterious.
Well, let's just take one step back. The last thing I want to touch on, how incredible was it's Paul Bettany. Who?
Vision?
Yes.
Paul Bettany.
Okay, I was correct. Sorry. Paul Bettany with the gum stuck in it. How fantastic. Through that whole magician sequence, I was literally rolling on the floor laughing.
Usually a, stoic, standard, straight up guy, not just him in the MCU, but as an actor, he plays dramatic roles. Right. He's a great comedic actor. Mm-hmm. That was a really big surprise for me.
Without a doubt, yeah. And even the sequence, I loved watching the gum travel down and gum up the gears.
The old 1960s. Yep. That's Bewitched, right?
Right, like, correct. Which we saw even in the intro.
Yeah. That was great. Yeah, I hope they keep pulling through that kind of comedy.
Without a doubt, but also hoping for a little more serious too.
And a birth 2, maybe to come in the next episode. We'll see.
Yeah, we will definitely have to see.
So yeah, and I really want to see Randall Park. I love that guy.
Randall Park is excellent. He was so great in Ant-Man and the Wasp. So hopefully we do get to see more of him. He does. I believe if you look up the show on IMDb, he does have top billing. So
he's definitely going to make an appearance then. Yeah, great. I'm looking forward to that. So then for you guys, you can look forward to more weekly reviews. WandaVision comes out on Friday. We record on Friday, put it up at midnight. And
we're also looking forward to the big announcement earlier this week from Netflix, a new original film every week. There look like there's going to be a lot of big ones. Of course, one that we're really excited about, Lin-Manuel Miranda making his directorial debut in the film. I believe it's called Tick, Tick, Boom. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah,
but really excited to see that. That's coming out later this year. But once again, Netflix, a new film every week. A lot of awesome films, a lot of star power coming soon. So we'll be sure to review plenty of those for you guys.
Yeah, awesome. So if you guys want to follow us on Instagram or Twitter, you can find me at Dom Gonzalez 48. And you can follow Ryan on Instagram at RB_the_SID. And on Twitter, you can find him at RB_with_the_call. And follow us on there. Let us know what you thought. Of course, we'll be on there. Other than that, like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to follow along in our weekly reviews of WandaVision and any other MCU shows that are coming out soon. We got Falcon and Winter Soldier and Loki. Also doing those week to week. We really like the week-to-week release of Disney Plus.
Big time.
Much more than the binge.
Yeah. I mean, we did it with Cobra Kai, definitely, and hats off to Netflix, big fans of Cobra Kai. But yeah, we do prefer the anticipation of waiting every week, and it also gives us a chance to review episode by episode for all of you folks at home.
And I think it's great because it's like old school television, right? And it gives you something to look forward to at the end of the week. Like, it's Friday, yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so awesome. Okay, rambled on too long. Check those things out, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Later.